Hi,
Hello there.
how are you doing?
I'm well. How is yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Now, I did wear a Fantastic Four t-shirt. I
I see
do
that.
own I do own a Doom t-shirt that I was trying to find, but I could not find it.
You will
Because
find it again.
I hope so. I do hope so. Now, obviously, welcome to the channel. Welcome to Heroic Conversations. It is an absolute honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Obviously, you were the first person to ever portray Doom in live action, which is absolutely brilliant. I'm going to try and avoid the word fantastic as much as I can.
You can use it. It's in the zeitgeist now.
It's
Mhm.
out there. Now, obviously, with the recent release of Fantastic Four First Steps, which has become quite the phenomenon and has made quite a lot of money, um, the idea of this series that I'm going to do now is speaking to members from obviously the unreleased still 1994 Fantastic Four film,
Mhm.
which because of the film has gained a lot of traction and people are finding it and going, where is this? Where can I watch this? How come this isn't
Yeah.
being released? And digging into the whole mythos and the background behind it all and trying to figure out why we haven't actually seen it. Now, obviously, you know why.
Yeah.
Starting the petition to get it
Well,
released. So, if you
yeah.
could give me some background, that would be fantastic.
Oh. I'm fantastically prepared to share any and all information that I have and insight, so to speak. You know, it's one of the most unusual stories in film history.
Mhm.
Quite simply, it really is. It's not an exaggeration to say that. It's highly unusual that an entire film would be made, finished, ready to be released, and then pulled back from the brink of release in 1994 for all kinds of reasons that were behind us, that were, in the subterranean layer, so to speak, um, that we were unaware of at that time. And there's a lot of different narratives that have developed out of that
Yeah.
unique thing, situation, but much has come to light over the years, and now we're it looks very promising that the sins of the past shall not be revisited, but shall be righted at
Mm.
last, shall be purged and expunged from this strange tale. But I'm happy to share it today. That was quite an introduction,
That was a
but
fantastic introduction.
I'll do my best to stay on point. Um, yes. So, um, how shall I begin? You know, the story about the original Fantastic Four film, which also, by the way, has been well documented in several, many articles, a book, um, a wonderful documentary called Doomed,
Yep.
the true story behind Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, and in many different other media outlets. The story has been told, theorized, and retold again. And to put it simply, for fans and listeners out there, um, uh, we we made the film in order before a deadline. So how does that work? There was a German producer named Bernd Eichinger. Bernd had a company called New Constantine at that time. Now it's called Constantine Films, I believe. But this is in the 80s and 90s. He acquired the rights to the Fantastic Four from Marvel. Um, and Marvel at that time, really didn't know where they were going with movies. They were
Hmm.
certainly hopeful. Stan Lee had ideas about how it could happen, but in a way, the industry had not really, even the technology didn't really exist to do Marvel stories quite in the way that they should.
Hmm.
But Bernd Eichinger wanted to do a film And he was certainly hoping to do it on a big budget level, and nobody was buying. So his rights were going to expire, I believe, midnight of December 31st of 1992, unless he had a film in production.
Yep.
And so he reached out to Roger Corman, the king of B movies, who knew how to stretch a dollar, as we would say, into all kinds of movies, which I grew up with. I revered Roger Corman in many ways for making, classics like Attack of the Crab Monsters, so many others. And um, Roger said, sure, we could do it and do it for $1 million.
Hmm.
And Baron said, okay, let's go for it. And off we went. And so it was, written, conceived, although I will say the script did come from an actual treatment by Stan Lee. Many
Wow.
people don't know that. And Craig Nevius wrote that script based on that treatment. Um, we rushed in production, by December, I think it was, and we were underway and we were shooting. I won the part of Doctor Doom, apparently over other actors who would go on to have a great history in
Yeah,
Marvel,
I have seen that.
such as Mark Ruffalo. But yeah, and that's a whole story of how I came into Doctor Doom and worked very under a tight schedule to inhabit and conceive of that role because it was a big responsibility. It was
Yeah.
the first time for all of us, for all of the Fantastic Four actors in this film, we knew we had an enormous responsibility to the comic book fans, to the history of this classic comic, to really live up to those roles, to inhabit those roles, to, as I like to say, lift ourselves to those archetypal comic book superheroes and villain.
Hmm.
And that we did under the amazing and enthusiastic direction of Ole Sasson. Ole had done some movies, he'd done a lot of music videos. This was a big shot for him. He knew it was crazy, as we all kind of were like, Fantastic Four, Roger Corman, what's that going to turn out to be? But, we were game. And we thought, maybe this will be the beginning of something. Maybe this will at least get them started on us, and then we'll get to make another,
Hmm.
and another and another. Um, and so off we went and into, the soundstage in Venice, California, where Roger Corman shot a lot of his movies, which, was as you'll hear, was a rat infested sort of, you know, sound stage with old sets from about every movie you can think of that he did, and a cat was our pest control. Um, but all that aside, we had limited budget, limited uh, time, most of all, and yet there was this spirit of absolute passion and unity that, like, we're pirates, we're going to do this thing, we're going
Yeah.
to knock it out in this amount of days and make the best movie we can. And in many ways, people would agree there's a kind of spirit in this film when you watch it, for all of its low budget, kind of uh, you know, simplistic action, shall we say. There's a kind of sincerity and passion to it that is unmistakable. Um, and it's a good script. And it was and really we knew we had the two most important things, which is the character and story.
Hmm.
We don't have the special effects, fine. So we will tell this story about the people who were affected, about how did the four come to be, and what is their role. And and that we did, and then it went on into '93, and eventually it was posting. There's a terrific score. although there are stories that the budget started to diminish and they weren't really giving us much money anymore. And so the director and the editor were really, trying to finish, and the guys who wrote the score even invested some of their own money to hire a massive orchestra. It's a great score, actually.
It is a good score. It is a
You
really
know,
good score.
and finally, but Corman, never didn't release a movie
Hmm.
ever. There's only one, and it's this one. And so there had to be a good reason. And we were called at the last, we were doing press junkets around the US. We had a trailer out there. We were signing autographs. We were, the first incarnation of the
Of
Fantastic
yeah,
Four on
of Marvel's
screen.
first family.
Yeah. And boom, the call came down. We were pulled back and it was shelved. And the director called us and he says, I got bad news and I don't even know how to explain it. So it took some time to sort it out. In fact, none of us, we were all kind of left spinning.
Yeah.
And, most of us, were young actors at the time. And so we moved on to whatever else was coming up. And it was, it was a blow.
Yeah.
Kid you not. It was like, what, wait a minute. I put my everything into doing that. At least I would like to see it.
Yeah.
And it was not to be. So it wasn't for several years until a story came out and we started to get a little more intel. And that was that Eichinger had finally made a deal with 20th Century Fox to make a big budget version of the Fantastic Four and to find a big director to do it. Part of that deal certainly required him to not release this film or any film before that would happen. And so it's also said that Avi Arad, who was head of Marvel at the time, or co-head, whatever, of Marvel, that he obtained the negative and, locked it up somewhere. He even said in some article once that he burned, I burned the copies. I don't believe that. Because nobody does that. So I believe there's a pristine print and a negative somewhere, probably in Burbank somewhere,
Yeah.
in a vault, if not Germany, who had, done the original film. So we'll see about that. Here's where the story gets really interesting. So
Yeah.
I've just spoken for quite a few minutes about how we pulled off the Fantastic Four.
Hmm.
Well, then several years start to go by. And what happens? Well, bootlegs of this film have gotten out, which means copies were made before it was shelved
Hmm.
unceremoniously, and they started to proliferate in the film underground and finally the comic book underground,
Hmm.
which, by the way, in the 90s and I would even say early 2000s, comic book culture was still very, very underground in a certain way.
Yeah.
It was a subculture, and it had not reached the mainstream, which it is today. I consider it mainstream today,
Oh,
but it was
100%.
not at that time. And so these VHS copies of the Fantastic Four would be showing up at Comic Cons and comic book conventions all around. And people would trade them and they knock off copies. They were terrible copies, but people coveted them. They said, "Oh my God, I gotta have that movie." And um, I know I see stories all the time where people write to me and still, asking for autographs and photos. I had a bad copy and I treasured it, my whole life. And then, all of a sudden there was a DVD going around that was a bit better. And then even some upres stuff. And so, the point is this, over about a 20-year period, this film became arguably one of the most bootlegged films of all time
Yeah.
and had a devoted cult following because for all of our, low budget, ragtag sort of production, there was something authentic and wonderful about the film. And greater irony to this is that the big budget version, which didn't get made, I think, until 2005, that's nearly 13 years later.
Hmm.
So this is really add, heartbreak to insult or whatever. It's like it took you 13 years and you couldn't have released our movie. It would have made no difference, whatsoever. But many have theorized, hey, it's so extraordinary. Maybe it really, I hate to say a blessing in disguise, but it certainly launched something, a
Mm.
mythos around the film, as you said,
Yeah.
uh, that makes it unique out of any other, comic book movie or Marvel movie, certainly Marvel movie, a movie of a Marvel property that exists.
Yeah.
And so, the fascination around it, and it's much beloved.
Hmm.
And people would do free screenings in various places. I actually got to attend one at a Comic-Con in St. Louis one time. I was invited. We went there and it was fabulous. It was like a whole audience just cheering and clapping and laughing at the what I love about this movie and what I think should be again credited to the director
Yeah.
is he knew, look, we can't rely on these big special effects. We don't even have them. We can barely pay for anything. And a lot of that technology wasn't even ready. It wasn't really affordable even.
No.
And so he concentrated on making it fun. He concentrated on it being, I think, a family movie,
Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
honestly. It's family friendly, which you could argue many of the Marvel films today, as wonderful as they are, I'm not so sure they're family films. They're
Yeah.
pretty gritty and pretty cynical at times. Not so with our movie. Comes out of the gate like probably like Superman from the 80s.
Yeah.
It's like it means what it says. It's there's a sincerity to it, and there's fun. And
Yeah.
and as Rebecca Staub, Sue Storm, the original Sue Storm, has pointed out recently, she said wisely, she goes, people, unfairly compare this film to the superhero films of the aughts and the later.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a comic book movie. It's really it's shot like a comic book. In
Yeah.
fact, there's Dutch angles. There's very tongue-in-cheek little moments. And Oli was aware of that, and I think he was right to go for that. It makes it a more fun, kind of heartwarming experience in spite of
Yeah.
it all. So what we have now is a foolish kind of circle where 30 years go by, and there's still three movies got made. You know, uh, big budget movies, all which many fans felt were, underwhelming. They either didn't hit the values of the comic as we wanted to see it, or it just took a different direction entirely.
Yeah.
And people still said, the 1994, that one, that one kind of had it. So, it's so terribly ironic. And so last year, on the 30th anniversary of our unrelease, I went out and I said, let's start a campaign, just to
Yep.
be a voice in the wilderness. I have no ire against Marvel or Disney or anybody. It's just, it's a fan-based voice saying, it's been enough time.
Yeah.
There's no way this film could tarnish the reputation of any Marvel MCU.
No.
It can't do any harm to anyone. It's just fun. And why not release it? So I did a change.org. I was supported by my castmates and by the film family. We consider ourselves the Fantastic Four family, the 94 family. And, it's steadily climbing. Our
Hmm.
numbers, our signatures are climbing all the time, especially with the most recent release of
Yeah.
First Steps. So, uh, and one small addendum for my very long monologue here, that the good news is that maybe it was my petition, our petition, Maybe it was Rebecca Staub calling up casting and saying, "Hey, there's a new movie. Couldn't you get us in there somewhere?" Well, Marvel finally opened their arms and said, "Yes, this is part of our history. You guys should be honored as such and welcome." And the four have cameos in the new movie, and they were given, a kind of homecoming at
Yeah.
Marvel. It was really, I mean, stunning. I am not a cameo in this. Doctor Doom has not appeared yet, so there's still
Yeah,
a
there's still time.
possibility that may happen. Uh, but I was ecstatic for my cast members and for the movie as a whole because I determined that there's been a curse on
Mm.
the Fantastic Four franchise because
Mm.
of the omission, of our film, and now that's been lifted. So I think there should be success with the Fantastic Four, and I hope the next step, they've taken a first step, the next step will be to release the Fantastic Four 1994 in all of its glory and let fans see it once
Yeah.
and for all.
And enjoy it in a cinema. I think that's some big thing. We've had the new Fantastic Four film came out. Obviously, I've gone and watched it. I'm a gigantic fan of the Fantastic Four. Obviously, I've watched the 1994 film numerous times on YouTube and other places like that. Um, with the new film, as soon as I spotted the original four, because you can see them, and they don't just show up once. They've got a couple of spots where they
Yeah,
show up. I noticed. Michael showed up as a firefighter, and then I noticed Jay as well. I was like, oh my gosh, there they are again. And then that little montage at the start where they're all going, "Thank you, Fantastic Four." The four
yeah,
of them are there saying thank you, and it's just such a nice moment. And then the premiere in America, of course, Rebecca and Vanessa, they actually met, and they
yeah.
have that lovely photo where they've met, and it's nice that, like you said, Marvel have kind of given it some recognition. They understand it exists. So with
According
this,
according to
yeah,
Rebecca and the others, they in no uncertain terms they said it was a shame about what happened,
hmm
and we are just glad and grateful that you're here to be part of this, and we welcome you with open arms. And that is amazing. That's Kevin
that is,
Feige
yeah.
made that statement, and I'm gonna hold him to it because it's a great thing, and
Yeah,
it finally has happened. I think everyone's matured, or the MCU has matured, or whatever has matured to the point where we can say, "Hey, this was the first movie. It deserves a place."
yeah, it does. And I think with the release, I mean, obviously I'm obviously quite online. Um, there's that many people that are now speaking about the 1994 film. I think now's the time to kind of push it and go, look, this exists. We can get this released. We've just got to all kind of band together. You enjoyed this Fantastic Four film. Look at
Yeah.
this one. As a fan of the Fantastic Four, obviously I go in to watch all these films, and I enjoy them as a fan of the four. Marvel's first family. I've grown up with them, reading their comic books. I mean, I've got a t-shirt, I've got multiple t-shirts, and
Mm.
seeing this new film felt like a family film. It was amazing. It was fantastic. It was really enjoyable. I myself went to the London premiere and watched like an exclusive little screening of it, little clips and stuff, and that was amazing to see. And the atmosphere there, all these fans of the Fantastic Four, all they'd have to do is just put their signature down on this change, and
It's,
we get the numbers. I mean, I think it's at 6,000 now or something.
it's about 6,000 now. I'd love to see it go to 10.
Yeah,
I don't see why we can't do 10.
I think it can just keep growing. I genuinely, and I'll push on everything I can. Like I said, I'm
Thank you.
doing this series to speak to cast members and hopefully some crew and get their stories, get their insights. Obviously, you've given the story, which is an insane story, to be honest, for any kind of film.
I
And
just, I keep
it's
saying, I
so bizarre.
really cannot find enough. I'm a huge film geek. I know
Yeah,
everything about movies. I'm an encyclopedia on movies, and I don't know this story has ever happened before. Because,
yeah.
and people say, the narrative that developed was like, well, they made the film just to hold on to the rights with no intention of releasing it. And I go, that's not true. The film
Mm.
was made as, in order to keep some rights, but there is no way whether the German Baron Eichinger or Roger Corman did not intend to release a movie. Nobody spends
No.
$1 million or more to not release it. It just that's just well, if that happened, it would be the first time in history.
Yeah, that's really
You know, and
bizarre.
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, especially with the
You know,
ensemble and like you said with the score, people taking money out of their own pockets. That's you people don't do that if there's no intention to release the project. And I think it is a
there was
shame that it
definitely
never
intention to
yeah.
release it. I
Yeah.
even have I recently popped up was a fan who still had from a Comic-Con that we did Polaroids of
Oh
all of
wow.
us with our signatures on it. And it's like, we were there, we were promoting the movie. Don't tell me it wasn't going to be released.
Yeah.
It was, it was pulled back for a business reason, and it was a damn shame. But um, it wasn't like it didn't have value. And that's the thing I want to contend with. I said the film has great value. It is of a certain time and of a certain style, but it is not. It wasn't so. The narrative is like it was so bad they couldn't release it. That's not true. It
No,
was just
not at all. No.
look at somebody pointed out some. I don't know if Manos Hands of Fate can have a Blu-ray. Certainly, the Fantastic Four. That's a very arcane reference, but that's a horrible movie that if anyone ever wants to look up Manos Hands of Fate. Fantastic Four is like, an Academy Award winner next to that one. So, it's a fascinating story and it's coming into a really wonderful moment. And I'm just hoping that Marvel will take it all the way,
Yeah. Yeah,
that
like
they will say,
it's
yes,
there.
it was the right thing. It's happened.
Yeah.
We have a New York Times article, Vanity Fair article, um, that quoted me as saying the curse is lifted. Um, and we have this wonderful petition. So yes, I urge all fans and listeners to go and find the change,
Yeah.
and sign it and share it. Share it with as
Yeah.
many people as you can, because I think it's great to have a voice to this.
Yeah,
You know,
100%. And
yeah.
like I said, this whole idea with this series, speaking with you guys, is to kind of make people aware that everybody wants it. It's not just there's not a fan that made it going, oh my gosh, let's start a petition. It's
Yeah.
yourself, you who played Doctor Doom in the film, started the petition because it's something that as I mean, for myself as a fan of the Fantastic Four, I want to see have a proper release. Have as like a have redo the press junkets. Let's make it a release and you know have people go, oh my gosh, this film. It's a really good film. I really enjoy the film. The costumes are fantastic. The effects are of the time. I mean, the stretching for Mr. Fantastic, I think, is brilliant. Where it just moves. And it's just, the costume, everything with it. I mean, the first scene with the
Yeah, the
establishment,
Doom
yeah,
suit is spot on. It's
it's
really
a
the Doom
really good
suit.
Doom
My
suit.
mask is absolutely. Those guys did an amazing job. They sculpted the whole thing to my body and they crafted that mask.
I'm a massive fan of the portrayals. I think a lot of the portrayals are the most accurate portrayals of the Fantastic Four that we've got. The suits are brilliant. The backstory was established with yourself and Reed being, you know, college friends, and obviously Ben being there, and then you've got the Sue and Johnny being kids, and then they grow up, and then you go to space, and it's this whole, you watch it and you feel like you're reading a comic book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but
It's a visual comic book. It's like you said, it's filmed as if it was a
wonderful.
comic, and it's the dialogue is like it's been teared off the page. The effects they're of the time that they're funny. In a sense,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
like you
There's
said,
there's
it's a
humor
family
to it.
film.
It's totally within. That's why I urge, and there's been a few, really good writers
Mm.
who have come out about that and said, like, look, this movie is absolutely of its time. There's nothing to be looked down our nose about
No,
it. You can't
definitely not.
compare it to what's happening today. And I want to add that again, Rebecca and I think Michael told me when they met Matt Shackman and the producer, they said, look, we passed around copies when we were in development here on
Mhm.
this movie. And of course, the one thing we really saw about it was that it was about family.
Yeah.
They are the first family. That's the fabric of the Fantastic Four. That's why we resonate with them somehow. That and which I loved in our movie, where the writers said it's also about their deficits become their finest attributes somehow, or
Yeah.
their special powers. That and family, and so the fact that they were passing it around, watching it, it's like, and that the new movie is evidence of some of that. It's like they really worked to make it a family,
Hmm.
um, to create those relationships, to show us the dynamic between the four. And I mean, it even goes so far as that they're married. Someone
Yeah.
said it picks up where yours left off. We have the marriage at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
This happens, I guess, at the beginning, and there's the baby, and so it's definitely it's a tip of the hat, or a kind of
Yeah.
inclusion to what we did. Yeah.
And what I really love as well is it's not Marvel haven't been shy to go, the original Fantastic Four are in this film. There's that many posts about it, that many people
Absolutely.
sharing that about going, look, like they're here. And that's, in my eyes, that's Marvel giving the film recognition that it deserves, saying, we know it exists. It is
Mhm.
something part, like you said, it's part of the history for Marvel. It's the first live action debut for many of these characters. And
It's canon.
yeah,
It's
it
Marvel
happened.
film canon for
Yeah,
sure. You
100%.
can you
And
can call it that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a multiverse, so it has to exist in this multiverse that Marvel has. If they're
I once
acknowledging the
postulated
multiverse.
that. I said, you could say somehow, in the multiverse, our film exists, and it can, bleed into whatever, verse you're working in for the new movie.
Yep.
So Dr. Doom could reappear there, or the Four could come in some other, in some other way. And so
Yeah.
in a sense, they have done that. We'll see. We'll see if I get to
100%, yeah. I
if I
mean,
get to face off at all with Tony Stark, who becomes Doctor Doom,
it
which there's
was
a lot of
honestly,
controversy
yeah,
about that.
there is. There is. I
Oh,
I saw a brilliant theory where it says that RDJ was never meant to be Tony Stark. He's always been Victor Von Doom. And then
man.
Tony's parents adopted Tony, who was actually originally Victor from Latveria, because the timeline didn't match up when, oh gosh, I'm gonna get attacked for this, but I think it's
Hmm.
Maria Stark, I think that's the name. When she was pregnant with the baby, that's not Tony. That's the baby that she lost. There's a massive theory about it
Oh,
that Tony's
wow.
always been Doctor Doom. But I think it'd be amazing if there was some kind of visitation to your universe, your Doctor Doom meets with the current Doctor Doom, and there's some kind of, it can happen, in this whole
Can
world
happen.
of the MCU where we have
It
I
can
mean,
happen.
fan
And
service is a
RDJ and
massive
I are
thing.
actually the same age, which is kind of interesting too, because a lot of people said, like, "Well, why is Doctor Doom so old? He's, come on." And I said, well, um, it is interesting.
It is.
He and I have been on odd parallel lines for many, many years. We even appeared in an interview magazine back in '85, before we had just done a couple of movies, both of us, we were both in like New Hollywood or something
Mm.
like that. So, I went off to do Doctor Doom eventually, which, got seen in a very strange way. And he became a superstar with Iron Man for some reason.
Hmm. Yeah.
But, it would be sweet to at least have something in there. I would love to be able to utter the words, "Here's to the future, my friends," because that's kind of the iconic phrase in our film, and have it in there somewhere. We'll see if they get creative. I hope so.
But it's amazing to hear the story. What I want to do now is dig into your portrayal as the first live action Doctor Doom that we saw.
Once I had the role, there was, very little time to prepare.
Mm.
And so I had to dive in like really intensely in order to live up to the responsibility of being the first actor to do Doctor Doom.
And
Yeah.
he is such an iconic villain. I think Doctor Doom is one of those villains that I think everyone kind of knows Doctor Doom. Obviously, you've had musicians as well, like MF Doom, who've kind of taken on the cartoon was a big thing. If you listen to the music, you can hear the cartoon in the music, and obviously a lot of his visuals. He has the green cowl with like it's more like a gladiator mask though, instead of a Doom mask. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, like so many people love Doctor Doom, and a lot of people are excited to see Doctor Doom return. I think every Fantastic Four film has actually included Doctor Doom at some point. I don't want to put any spoilers out there, but to my knowledge, I think obviously 1994 had it, 2005 and 7 had one, 2015 had one, and obviously the new film there is Doctor Doom. Surround it, and one thing I really loved in the new film was you had like there was an empty chair at one point that just had Latveria, and you instantly know whose chair that's going to be. And then there's the flag as well. Because what I love with the Doctor Doom character is the monarch kind of position he's got. He's got this powerful position. And another interesting thing with his character, and I don't know whether, say you felt this, is in my eyes, he's not really a villain. He just he has love for Latveria. That he loves his country. He's
Yeah.
very, this is my country. I will help my people, and I hate Reed Richards. He was my friend at one point. He's now my nemesis. He's smarter than me, and that annoys me. But he's got humanity, whereas and the scene where obviously he stretches his hand out to help you up, and then it's that laugh where you just go ha ha, and you just drop because you go that's your weakness. Reed, that's your weakness. You have the humanity.
Reed, help me. We were friends once. Remember. Hang on, Victor. You see, you have not the courage to strike the final blow, do you? Just as 10 years ago you failed in our moment of triumph. You betrayed me. Colossus was to be ours together, and now it stands between us. You still have a chance, Reed. Go on. Save me. Do not think for a moment I shall ever rest until I have what is rightfully mine. Here's to the future, my friend.
You have that. There's still you'll never what is it? You're never prepared to give the final blow, I believe you say. And yeah, it's such a moment because that characterization, and as we've said, the film itself is very faithful to the source material. Like I've said, it's like it's been ripped from a comic page. That's something that I can see happening in a comic with Doctor Doom laughing at Reed as he falls. Like that's just that's
Well,
very Doctor Doom coded.
working backward from that final moment, I will just give you a little extra on detail on that. I can tell you, and the writer might say what, but I say no. I remember very well that line. I'm being very narcissistic, as Doctor Doom would be. I threw that line in because I felt in it was a pretty straight up, last monologue
Mm.
about we were supposed to be friends and now it stands between us, and I said there's got to be something that Doom does in this last minute that you do not expect, or that maybe you
Mm.
would expect, but you weren't seeing it coming. And I said, what if he laughs at him for saving him? And I can tell you I know because I rewrote the monologue and went in to do the ADR, the looping. That's one of the few scenes in the film where I actually did get to re-record my dialogue. Um, and I wrote it and I expanded some things on it. I said, look, if you don't want to use it, you don't have to, but this is why I'm going to do it. And it's it was, you see, you do not have the strength to strike the final blow, do you? And then I even threw in, go on, Reed, save me. It's like he's in that last moment, he's toying with Reed's human,
Hmm.
kind of affections and humanity and all of that. And that's the power. And that's the riskiness or edginess of Doctor Doom, that he's willing to go the extra
Yeah.
mile. And then if you dial back to the very beginning of the film, when they have the experiment that goes awry, you see in that moment when I'm Victor,
Hmm.
who at the beginning seems like, a little soft-spoken, a little bit of edge, but you're not quite sure. Maybe they're friends,
Mm.
They certainly had great respect and maybe even affection. And I had made the decision that Victor admired Reed, greatly, but that the failure of the experiment and the ensuing, whatever Colossus did to Victor,
Mm.
that took this, let's say it was a dormant, kind of enviousness and rage and what have you, and desire for power, and then, exploded it fully
Hmm.
in his system, and then that's what really gives rise to Doctor Doom. He says, in this moment when Reed's going to abandon the thing because it's going haywire, and he goes, Victor, get out of here, and I'm committed, saying, I will not fail, I will not fail. And I said that over and over, and the director shot me doing it. And it was a vow. One, the backstory of Doctor Doom, which heretofore has not been explored in any of the films,
Mm.
including ours. But it was important for me that I understood that backstory, that
Yeah.
there was motivations, if I'm an American actor who needs motivation. And I'm really interested in the motivation of Doctor Doom and his history, which is that his country was, usurped, that he has a mother and father, and they're Romani, basically,
Hmm.
and vilified in the land. The mother is so-called witch and is killed, in
Hmm.
fact, and imprisoned in kind of in hell, basically, or a kind of Tartarus,
Yep.
purgatory by Mephisto. And I said, that's what Doom wants. He wants to use, his inheritance of magic power, and he's going to excel in science. He's going to rescue his mother from this realm. He's going to penetrate that dimension
Hmm.
somehow. And I said, Colossus, this is just the personal story of the
Yeah.
actor going through all this, is to capture Colossus so I have the power to do it.
Mm.
And so there was two things in that opening scene that I wanted to layer in there just for me,
Yeah.
really just for me to believe it fully. And one is there's a medallion around my neck that I believe my mother gave me. It has some runes on it. And right before we get into the experiment, I take it out and I kiss it. And the director left it in. There's nothing in the script about that. There's
Hmm.
no reason for it, except there's something about this guy that is different. He has another agenda, let's say.
Yeah.
And so that I wanted to just do one, thing that signified that. And then his absolute, kind of, absolute obsession in that moment that he won't leave his station.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, what, gives rise to the accident and fries him and in an operatic kind of,
Yeah.
conflagration and burns him up. But I put those two things together in that moment to say, like, there's something different about this guy
Mm.
that's a premonition of the future.
Yeah.
And so those things, were layers to the Doom that I wanted to achieve. And as I recently went on record with the New York Times, and I said, yeah, there was a friction between what I wanted to achieve, what I
Mm.
think we all wanted to achieve, and what the resources of the film would allow us to achieve. But as an actor, I was like, look, it's me up there, and I'm gonna, figure out how to make a character come alive in a suit.
Yeah.
because I realized very quickly, I went, my God, I'm going to be 95% of this movie. I'm going to be in this,
Yeah.
you know,
With a mask
iron
on.
suit.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? And I said, well, then his physicality has to really show his inner life.
Hmm.
It has to show, he he is he wants power. Power is very important to Dr. Doom. He's narcissistic, so
Hmm.
he can strike poses and be impressed with himself, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, there's a kind of unbridled, kind of rage inside of him, and I wanted that to show in various moments.
Hmm.
He's also a little strangely playful in a kind of
Yeah.
almost sadistic kind of way. There's something a little bit of the saddest, in him, that he would pick up the doctor by his throat and kind of play with him a little bit. And there's even, which is certainly not in the comic, I think very much, I wanted to throw in a little bit of a twist
Hmm.
in Doom, like a little eroticism almost, like he's a guy who wants to wear this suit
Yeah. Yeah.
to some degree. So there's something in him that is, almost, glorifying himself and a little self-punishment at the same
Mm.
time. So I don't want to get over intellectual about it, but actors think about this stuff,
Yeah.
You really want to, try to achieve something. And so I set out trying to do all of those colors in this performance. And if you go through it, and if you care to go through the performance and say, I see where he's doing that there, where he's playing with Alicia in a slightly, over the limit sort of way,
Yeah.
where he has humor. I said, I'm going to do a laugh. I mean, to the extent that Doom could be very pleased with himself or pleased with
Yeah.
the situation, he could laugh in a mighty way. And you said it best, Antony, when you said, remember, he's a monarch.
Hmm.
He is a king. He sees himself as a king. I even threw in some lines in another scene where I say, you know, uh, I am it's you're in a when the four first encounter Doom in this early scene, he says, where are we? He says, a charming little country, and I'm its beloved monarch. But I say that wasn't in the script. I just said I'm going to go for it. And I had some classical training and
Hmm.
Shakespeare training, and so I said, I gotta go all the way here. And the director really pushed me to do it.
Yeah.
He said, most of us actors are always, we want to play it real and we want to play it natural. That's the problem with Doom. He's not mm, this. It's naturalism,
Yeah.
if I may, is a style of behavior.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's more real. It just means it's more close to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, Doom is not close to myself. I need to lift myself to Doom, in
Yeah.
fact. And this is, there's many other terrific actors who have done Doom, and there's another terrific actor who's going to do him again. That's my one, sort of criticism and advice. If anyone were to ask me, I'd say, remember, you look at the comic books. He's
Yeah.
enormous. And to bring it to yourself as the actor, to bring it down to you and make him casual or cool or cynical in some way, that's not Doom.
No.
You won't, to me, we're not serving the brilliance of the character that way. So um, that's why I said about it the way I did. People say, well, he's really over the top. I go, well, you can't go too far with Doom. Not really.
No.
The movie's too small, perhaps, but not me. So, that was really my overall approach, and to be a bit risky,
Mm.
to take the risk and not play it safe. And again, I give it to Ole Sasson because it's very hard for an actor to go in and face all of that, face all those people and the cameras and all that without the director saying, do it.
Mm.
Don't hold back. give us everything you've got with Doom, make him, Mussolini, make him, this tyrant. He is a tyrant
Yeah.
in the classic sense,
Yeah.
He's a Greek god, like Kronos or some kind of, king. So I thought about Richard III, and I thought about Kronos, and I thought about the Phantom of the Opera, and really operatic
Yeah.
characters.
Very out there.
And yeah,
Yeah.
it's like that's what we expect from Doom, and you know, and I think we cheer when we see him go
Yeah.
all the way. That's really what we want. Um, so I tried to layer this performance as much as I could, and have fun with it, and and I feel that I achieved it to some degree, and within the context of that film, and lo, these years later, I get these wonderful, sweet accolades, people saying, best Doom still, you know? And this is after all these hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent on all these movies. All that being said, I'm so, we're all very anxious to see what Mr. Downey will do.
Mm.
He's a fine, fine actor, and I think is so smart, and he will figure out an interesting way to pull off Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
And we'll see, where he sits within the pantheon
Yeah.
of Dooms.
There's another Greek reference there.
Yeah, there you are.
I
Well,
do agree. I think when it comes to Doom, he is very. See, now you mentioned Phantom of the Opera, and I started thinking about it, and he is very Phantom of the Opera-esque with the whole dramatics, and I feel like he would drop a chandelier and he would sing to himself as in solemn and solitude. And in the comics, obviously he plays the piano quite a lot, and he sits there
yeah,
just playing the
he
piano
has an
because he's
organ, no?
yeah, yeah. Yes, I think it's an organ
Or
in
is
his
it a
like
piano?
in his private chamber because there's a bit in
Yeah.
the comics where Sue goes to go and see him. She's invisible and she goes and visits, and he's just sitting there just playing to himself.
Well,
An
there's a
excellent.
melancholy to Doom,
Mm,
Don't you think? I've always I
yeah,
always thought right from the beginning, I said, there's a solitary, almost sadness to this character. Like he's brilliant, and he's alone in that brilliance and in his affliction for wanting so much power. And there's got to be a reason for that, which is
yeah,
that there's a kind of, he feels alone, and all the great monsters. People say, well, were you inspired by Doctor Doom as a kid? I grew up in the 60s, so I was highly aware of the Fantastic Four.
yeah,
And of all the comics, I often say, and it's true, they were kind of my favorites, because um, I like Spider-Man, and I like Superman, and I like,
mm,
various things. But I remember walking home and at the dime store, and there was these comic books in the rack, and I would look at them. And Fantastic Four was just the most intriguing to me. It's
yeah,
like, I can stretch. That one's on fire. This one's like a rock, and she's, there's something about the combination of those, and I was always a bit intrigued. But I think even as an actor, my earliest inspirations were monsters. Was
yeah,
the Universal monsters. I was just over the moon about all those classic Frankenstein, Dracula, Mummy, Wolfman, Invisible Man, Jekyll and Hyde. To me, that they were really creature. They were
yeah,
things that occupied my childhood imagination. And I think Lon Chaney, Senior was like my first like acting hero. It's like, look at this guy. He can do anything. He can change himself. He's Quasimodo. He's the Phantom. So I was really captivated by all that. And when Doom got, when I
yeah,
was given Doom, I said, okay, I'm got to step up to that kind of level and say, like, this is my shot to play a great villain
yeah,
slash monster character, And so I think the roots of my passion for Doom, came out of that too.
And that's amazing to hear that, you took influence from like they're classics now, with the Invisible Man and things like that. I mean, and the best thing is recently they have that Universal Studios, don't they, where you've got the monsters are walking around and stuff, and you've got the Invisible Man, and he's got that kind of, that funny edge to him in a sense where he just he takes the mick out of people, and people say stuff, and he goes, "Really?" And it's just there's little bits where it's just, and I love it because people really delve into these characters. Like you said, you took inspiration from this, where
Mm.
you have that, you've got that kind of, like you said, he's quite sad and he's lonely in his success. So he's really proud of himself, but he has no one to share it with. So I
No.
think when he has these moments where he can interact with people, he kind of not insults them, but like you said, plays with them because that's
Yeah.
that's he enjoys that and he's trying to branch out to them maybe. I mean, obviously, I would love to do a deep dive into Doom's complex and his brain and everything because I'm sure there's layers and layers to do because of his history, what he's gone through. I mean, recently in the comics, he became Sorcerer Supreme, which is really like a fun storyline because obviously in the name Sorcerer Supreme, it has the word Supreme in it. And I know for a fact that Doom would love to have the name Supreme next to his name because he'd be like, yes, I am Supreme. And he relishes in it. And one of my favorite parts about Doom's character is when he's given a position where he can do good for the world, he does, like he relishes into it. And we've seen it in the comics multiple times that when Doom is given the resources to kind of make the world a better place. He does, but he does it in a Doom way.
Yeah, he
It's
does it
his
as
vision.
he does. He has his humanity,
Yeah,
but as I said, it's a little skewed.
yeah,
It's a little twisted toward his incredible narcissism, which is
yeah,
a function of his wound, his sort of egoic wounding, if you will. And his narcissism says, it shall be a better world, but it will be a doom world. It will
yes, it would
be
be a Doom
one
world.
that reflects my magnificence somehow.
Flags
So,
everywhere.
yeah.
But and one
And
thing,
and I love that. I love that about him, and there's humor in that. That's why
yeah,
I said in that one scene, I am its supreme and beloved monarch. I said
yeah,
supreme, you know, and go back to your rooms like good little children, as if he's this tyrannic father
yeah,
somehow. Um, so I think playing on those levels is is cool, and I hope they experiment a little bit with that,
yeah.
maybe in the upcoming storylines, at least some of it,
Well,
um, because the humor is important, and
yeah.
it's not a Tony Stark humor. It is a Doom humor.
Yeah, there's different, and I do think personally, Robert Downey Jr. will, if they go in that direction, he'll be able to deliver in that direction that would be separate from
For
Tony
sure.
Stark. Because Tony
Yeah,
Stark's humor is very, cheeky, kind of tongue in cheek. He's
yeah.
very, you know, I want to say sassy. Tony Stark's
He's
quite a sassy,
sassy and
yeah,
he's
he's a sassy
cute and
character.
he's
Yeah,
yeah,
he's
yeah.
a playboy at the end of the day.
He's
He's
a
a
playboy.
philanthropist. Yeah,
Exactly
whereas
right.
Doom is like we keep saying, he's very playful with it. So he's more, there's like a
He's
pain behind
it's
it.
more I would say it has an edge of
Yeah.
he's sadistic a little bit and playful, yeah, like as a cat is with a mouse, just sort of
Yeah,
knocking it about, and it's sardonic humor often too.
he
Yeah, I
enjoys
think
it, but others might not. I think that's the best way to put Doom.
that's
He
well said.
he loves it. Other people
Yeah.
might be like, "Oh, that's not something you'd laugh about." And he's like, and he's just cackling to himself. He's like, "This is hilarious." I mean, there's bits where in the comics we see the similarities between Reed and Doom, where, as we were saying earlier, with the egos and narcissism, a lot of the time Reed's ego is what causes him his major hubris, where he does something and then that's what kind of bites him in the ass in a sense. Whereas where it comes to Doom, he has that rise, but I feel like I'm not trying to insult Reed's intelligence because obviously I love the Fantastic Four, but Doom is a lot more meticulous with it. So even if something goes wrong, it's still Doom's like, I did that. I'm proud of what I did. And he
Oh
plays it
yeah.
off like that's meant to happen. Oh, that explosion, yeah, that's just part of it. With like we just said, he that experiment going wrong at the start of the film, he's carrying on with it. He's staying in his place because he
Yeah.
doesn't want to admit that he failed. And I think that's his hubris, whereas Reed's is very much his ego can and his intelligence can be his downfall, whereas Doom's perseverance would probably be his. That's the best way I can probably word that. Whereas
That's really well said, I think.
Doom's very
Yeah.
calculated with it. He doesn't want to fail because of this
No.
narcissistic tendencies.
And he
So
won't admit to
yeah,
failure.
yeah,
He'll
because if
just, up the game somehow or figure out another way,
be very
to
theatrical,
prove that he's right.
yeah,
And there is that, kind of righteousness there. And there's the other aspect, which, again, I think I took it wholeheartedly in our film, that that he's jealous somehow of Reed, almost
yeah,
like a jealous lover. They're not lovers, but like the
yeah, no, yeah,
kind of unrequited thing about, like, I wanted to be the best friend somehow, and even though that was never going to happen. And at the end, when he confronts them in the scene where they're going to do the laser transfer, uh, he tries to call him back, saying, "Right, Victor," and I say, "You may call me Dr. Doom. I'm not Victor anymore, but I remember what happened, and it's you did this to me." It's really like a kind
yeah,
of it's kind of a vengeful lover somehow. Look at it, see me. I also threw in a lot of those when I was doing the film, because I said, it's something about his, almost a perverseness
mm,
in showing who he is to Reed and to them, and to evidence of his, I am greater.
yeah,
I am greater than you, and that's so important to him. And I think it's interesting to play with those levels. We will see if they, if the storylines can accommodate those things
mm,
in terms of how Mr. Downey goes about it. But I'm glad at least I got my licks in,
yeah.
30 years ago, and we can,
We can
we can
relish in
discuss
that.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can enjoy it and we can share the enjoyment. As the person who portrayed it and as the person who enjoys that portrayal. You were saying
Mm.
earlier about the people that are still praising, saying that you were the best Doom. Still, you know, when it
Which is
comes
so
to
kind.
oh well,
Yeah.
it's in terms of comic book accuracy, 100%. You are as if the comic book has come to life. That's the way I see it. Yours is very with the 1994 film. It's very comic book-esque. Like you said, it's a comic book film. It's not
Yeah.
interconnected universe film. It's not it is a comic book film. It's a film that's meant to be enjoyed, as we said, by families to watch it and go, that was brilliant. That was really fun. It's not, there's not a message to take from it. You could take messages from it. You could read into it if you want to, but it is just a fun, what,
Sure.
hour and a bit, hour and a half, I think.
Fantastic
Just,
entertainment.
yeah, just
It's
enjoy
pure
it.
entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
beauty of it.
Exactly.
The
And when we
enjoyment.
enjoy it, like, we want our villains to be villainous, and we
Yeah.
want them, to be big and bold and brash, and and not hold back. And so that's what's truly fun about it.
Yeah.
We will we will see, and it would be, again, brilliant if they would consider finding a way to release the film
Yes,
after all these
100%.
years. And you know you could release it as is, you could give it some upgrades easily. There's so
Yeah,
many ways to, we could improve the sound, we could do a bunch of things just to make it, even a fuller experience. But I'm so happy to hear from you and so many others that the value of it is appreciated, that it's
100%.
not, we should not be shunted off as some inferior thing, but
No,
what it is on its own. And and I think Marvel, God love them, they really have come around to that.
yeah.
I I learned so much about. I did a documentary. I narrated a documentary about a Marvel called Icons Unearthed,
Mm.
where they interviewed me about the movie, and then they asked me if I would narrate the whole show, which was really cool. And I learned so much about Marvel, and I had great respect for Kevin Feige, who really, really knew his stuff when he
Yeah,
came in there. This, kind of, um, well, as the brain of the MCU of who could conceive of all these, the ways to go with it. So I have a lot of admiration for him, and what he's been able to do. It is the MCU is certainly the biggest franchise, I think,
yeah,
in history of movies. So,
100%.
um, and and though they've had some varying degrees of success in the last few years, it is hoped that Fantastic Four signals, first steps signals a new wave, and hopefully it'll have some of this fun that we're talking about.
Yeah,
That it doesn't just go into this sort of grim, world of characters where you really don't understand anything unless you see all those movies.
yeah,
Um, and so it's an exciting time,
it is.
and I hope that Doctor Doom will be a big part of it, and that I'll get to participate in some way.
100, I genuinely think with Doctor Doom, I believe they'll do some kind of multiversal travel to get Doctor Doom into the main universe, the Fantastic Four to the main universe, and things like this. I think, even a 5 minute conversation just would be entertaining. Have a short, brief scene where, Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom meets with your Doctor Doom, and it's, it's an older Doctor Doom, which is more stoic and a lot more theatrical. He's a lot more Shakespearean in a sense where he's done so much. The Fantastic Four have kind of gone on to do new things. I mean, they could take references from the Life Story comic where it follows if the Fantastic Four never really got their powers. It could take references from there where, they live a somewhat normal life and things like this. And you could really play into that. So I really do hope we get something because it would just be fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, 100%, I will continue to push this film to be released
Oh,
properly,
thank you so much,
not through
Anthony.
bootlegs and YouTubes.
Yeah, it would be a wonderful thing. And I think the petition, again, it's an action. I
Yeah,
put it out there to just give a voice to so many, thousands that would love
yeah,
to see this movie in a proper way and have it available. And as I say over and over, give it its proper place in film history. It is not
100%. Yeah.
a film that anyone should be ashamed of. In
No.
fact, it's a kind of wonderful piece that needs to be enjoyed.
And it's loved by fans and the actors as well, and like we've been
Oh yeah.
speaking about the love that you brought to Doctor Doom and the love for the character that you've got. I mean, you going into the backstory with Mephisto and his mother being a witch and things like this, it brought a massive smile to my face because it's this passion that fans love to see. It's the enjoyment that you guys have from it that we love seeing. So I personally, I will continue to advocate and I want to make sure that this film gets released. That's something that I want to do. That's something that I
Oh,
want to bring into fruition. I want it to have an official release, even if we just get it available to Disney Plus, and that's something that
yeah,
we get it onto a proper platform with,
I agree.
the credits, and even after the credits, in classic MCU fashion, we could have somewhat of a post-credit scene where it's clips from loads of different interviews and conversations and backstories and clips from Doomed and things like this. I mean, the Doom documentary should really be on Disney Plus. That's my personal opinion. That was a big documentary that they did with the
It's a
backstories and things.
it's a
Yeah.
fabulous and fantastic documentary by Marty Langford, who, initially I think wanted to do something about trying to find the original film or something, and then it turned into that. And most of us all climbed on board and said, "Sure, let's talk about it. It's time." And it's really well done, and has served as a bridge to people
Yeah.
seeking out the film and learning more about it. And for sure, I think Doomed, and then to see. In fact, I went once to uh, some kind of yeah, it was a festival or a con in
Mm.
I think it was in Kansas or something. I was invited out when Marty was showing the movie, and then after we watched Doomed, they screened the Fantastic Four. Free of charge. There was
Yeah,
nobody took any money, it was,
that's the
absolutely
beauty of it. Yeah.
fan driven. And that was really special to have the two together was great. So I think that would be a fantastic thing to advocate.
100%.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
it has been an absolute delight to have you on the show. Thank you so much
More
for
than a
agreeing to
pleasure.
it.
More
Um,
than a pleasure.
like I said, we'll keep pushing it. We'll keep trying it. As I said as well, this is a series that I'm trying to do where I'm going to speak to as many people as I
Wish I
can.
can
Well,
connect.
let's hope we get the film released. It's been lovely having you here. Thank you so much for
Oh,
agreeing. And I think it's only right if we say this, but here's to the future, my friend.
I'll say it for once and for all and for many. Here's to the future, my friend.
Thank you so much for coming onto the show. You have a lovely rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll be in contact.
Wonderful.
Bye bye now. Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye bye.